everybody, Chelsey here. Today I have a really fun video using some new stamps and dies, but first I just wanted to say a big thank you to the creative design team. This is my first post collab with them. I was thrilled to be asked to join the team, and I can't wait to share some future videos with you guys. So if you have not seen all the other videos this week in that DIY Valentine theme, make sure you go into the description box and click on everybody's videos, check out their channels, subscribe, and make sure you stay tuned to all the video inspiration coming up very soon. Okay, so today I am going to be focusing a lot on this heart background die. I'm going to be mixing in lots of other dies and some other stamps, but the superstar is this die. I also pulled this fun set for the hugs right here, but these three have dies that go along with them, and then there's some really nice coordinating sayings as well. So we're just going to jump into the first technique, because you will see how this one technique kind of branches over into 3 different cards. So what I have here is a piece of 4.5 by 5 3/4 white daisy cardstock. I wanted it to be a little bit bigger than this die, which cuts 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I have just white cardstock, and I also have a piece of fun foam. It could be white to match the cardstock if you want, or black, or whatever color you would like. Save that for later. First off, we're just going to need the white cardstock and an all-purpose mat. So we are going to do some oxide ink blending. I have picked raspberry, peacock feathers, mowed lawn, mustard seed, spiced marmalade, and seedless preserves. And I have inking tools here and foams. So I like to change them out every time I change the color of ink that I'm using, just so I don't contaminate my ink pads. And I also use the blending foams just for oxide ink. I don't use it with other inks because it can also contaminate regular dye-based inks, because the oxides are pigment and dye-based. They're like a combination ink. So I'm going to start with the picked raspberry. I'm just going to start off the edge here. I'm going to try to keep these areas fairly thin because I have a lot of colors to put on here. And I want some room to be able to blend one color into the next. So I'm aiming kind of for the thickness of the pad here. Now, it's so much easier when you start on the edge, but what I'm gonna do is just start very close to the pink, and so that I'm just overlapping it a little bit. And I'm using very light pressure actually to try and avoid getting harsh lines. And I'm going in a circular motion. I'm just gonna keep applying ink, laying it down until I get it the intensity that I want. You can see how that pink area has gotten smaller already. I'm going to go back into the picked raspberry, and I'm just going to wipe this orange off here. And then I'm going to re-intensify it pink, because sometimes when you add the next color, the first one just kind of fades out and disappears. Hopefully the camera's not shaking too much, because my table is definitely shaking a little bit with my inking. And then if you need to, you can always go back with the other color. I just go back and forth until I'm happy with the blend and it's smooth enough for me. Now you guys can see here, see how like kind of weird and scummy the ink pad looks? It was fine when I used it, and then I got a re-inker. And I think the problem is I did not shake my re-inker well enough. And so my mustard seed has this like really weird texture, kind of gummy texture to it. Not a big fan. So I might need to replace that. It still works, but if you do have re-inkers for your oxides, make sure that you shake them extremely well before you put them on your ink pad. I'm pretty sure that's what the problem is. So there's my rainbow. It never looks as blended on camera as it is in person, but it is quite blended if you saw all my going back and forth between colors. The stripes of color are not evenly dispersed. I did end up with quite a bit of green here in the middle. I could go back with some more peacock feathers and try and bring that teal up, but I think I'm happy with how that looks so far. I'm going to add some moon dust glitter gel. Now, unfortunately, I accidentally ordered an extra of the nebula one, so I am almost out of this, but I'm going to try and stretch it. If not, I will add in some of the nebula. It's exact same base, the same iridescent glitteriness, but it has some gold stars, which when you're die cutting, don't always die cut the best. So I'm going to try and see if I can squeeze out and cover this whole piece with a layer of this moon dust color. This stuff is really cool. If you can see kind of how stringy it is, it's a true like gel consistency. And I think I'm gonna flip it this way and start with the lighter colors. I just have one of these silicone brushes, but you could use a paintbrush, you could use a regular palette knife, anything like that. And keeping in mind that this is gonna pick up some of the color because it is wet. So that's why I'm starting with all the warm colors first. I'm gonna get this all evenly kind of dispersed on here, and then I'm going to wipe my spatula here. Right, we did it with not like too much to spare. So now it's a waiting game. Hopefully you can see all that glittery gorgeousness. I'm gonna lay this aside to air dry. I've tried heat setting them. You can, but it doesn't always do the best job. And I find they stay a little bit more tacky afterwards. So I'm just gonna let that air dry and wipe up all my tools, wash everything, and then I will come back when it's ready to go. So it has only been a second or so for you, but on my end, it's been about 6 hours since I did this rainbow panel. Look at that gorgeous sparkle. So it's definitely worth the wait. It did not take fully 6 hours to dry. I checked it at 3 hours and it was almost dry, and then I got busy doing other things. So then I just came back to it now and it's completely dry. You can tell if you touch it and it still feels cool, it is not fully dry. And of course, if you touch it and it comes away on your fingers, it's not fully dry. But I need to die cut this now, and I don't want to because it's so pretty. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a piece of fun foam. This is just like regular craft foam that you get at the craft store. It's the same size as the paper. And what I'm going to do is just take some glue. I would normally use this glue, but I am almost out and I cannot find my backup of that. So I'm gonna take, I have a big bottle of this tacky glue, and I'm just going to glue this foam to the back before I die cut, because it seemed a little bit easier to me than trying to glue all the individual pieces afterwards. And I'm gonna pick this up out of my little glue puddle, move it over, and put my big block on it so that it keeps putting pressure on that. And I'm just gonna clean up my mat and my spatula. All right, that has hopefully sufficiently dried. I think it should be okay. But I am going to put this die on top and run this through my die cut machine. I'll probably do it forward and back just to make sure that it cuts right through that whole stack. I should also mention, when I put this through my Big Shot machine, I used a piece of wax paper over top of the die, just because even though this is fully dry, the Stickles gel does stay just slightly tacky. And with all the pressure on it from the plates, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to lose a whole bunch of my sparkle as it went through. Oh my goodness, you guys, look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? Oh, I hope it's translating on camera the way it looks in person, because it is just ultra sparkly and glossy and a rainbow. Like, what else could I ask for? Okay, and just because I want a little extra shimmer, I know, enough is never enough, right? I'm gonna take a piece of pearl paper. This is our pearl cardstock. It has this gorgeous, subtle, pearly sheen to it. And I'm just going to put my tape runner on the back and stick it on my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. Okay, and now this I don't have to pop up because the foam is already attached, which already gives me some nice dimension. I'm gonna put liquid glue on the back of this again, and then use my block to weigh it down while it dries. So this might not have been the best plan to put this onto pearl cardstock because the pearl cardstock is really smooth and not very porous. So I've had to let this dry for a little while, but I think it's dry enough now that I can move on. I have a Hugs stamp here. That is from the Howdy Neighbor set. So I stamped it in Versamark, white embossed it with heat embossing, and then I just die cut it. I also stacked 2 layers behind it of just the black die cut to make it a little bit more substantial, and so that it wouldn't sink into all the crevices. I just want it to kind of float along the top here. So I'm gonna use a little bit of glue. It doesn't matter if there's glue where it's not touching the background because it won't hurt it at all. So I'm just gonna put that on there. If you're really worried about it sagging, you could put pop dots where it's gonna be over the top of the holes, but I am not gonna worry about that. And there we go. I don't think I'm gonna add anything else. If you really wanted to, you could do like little black enamel dots or little sparkles or something, but with the pearl paper behind and then all this glittery rainbow goodness on top, I think that's, I'm good with stopping there. So the bonus of using that heart die is now I have all these glittery rainbow hearts that I can use to make another couple cards. So right here I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. I'm gonna use a little bit of washi tape to hold it down for me. And then I have 2 of these borders. They are from the Yuletide border set, this one up here. And they're cut out of silver glitter paper. And what I want to do is just stick them down a little higher than center, so kind of on that top 1/3 of the card, probably something like that. And I'm just going to use little dots of glue to adhere that in place. All right, now I'm going to start playing, and I'm just going to try and have a rainbow of colors, not in any particular order, but I also want a variation in size of the hearts. So I'll just keep kind of playing around, trying different things, different order, different sizes, and see what really works for this. I kind of want to scatter them along this, some sticking down farther, some sticking up higher. So I'm just going to play with this for a little bit and see what I can come up with. All right, we are almost done this card. I'm going to take the black archival ink, and I'm going to take this little scripty love you sentiment. This is actually from a retired stamp of the month. I'm going to list and hopefully link all or most of the supplies I'm using down below, and if any of them are retired, I will make sure to note that. I want to stamp this right off the edge. There we go. So there's our finished card. Very simple, but also very sparkly and very pretty with all those rainbow colors. For our next card, I want to use some more of those hearts, those glittery hearts, and I have this new die. It is the Diagonal Stripe Slimline, so it is Slimline size, 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and it creates this nice background. So I have cut 3 of them here. I'm going to stack them on top of each other to give it dimension, and then I'm going to put them onto my card base. Close to My Heart does sell the Slimline card bases as well, which the finished size is 3.5 by 8.5. So these fit perfectly onto the front, and they have that nice stitching detail around the outside. I don't know about you guys, but I love working in different formats and having the Slimline cards. They're so popular right now. And I like that you can do them tall this way or long this way and do some things differently than what you can do on smaller size cards. So to start off, I'm just going to take a little bit of glue and I'm going to stick all of these together. You could use tape runner if you want, but I think glue might be a little bit faster. Now while we're doing all this gluing, I'm going to go ahead and glue this right onto my card base. All right, so now our background is done. I have 2 adorable little envelopes. These are cut from the same silver foil cardstock that we're going to be using on the next card actually. And they come scored. When you die cut them with this cute little die, it scores them for you, and then all you have to do is just fold them. And then how I'm going to attach them is just put a glue dot in each of those little corners and then close it on that, so I don't have to try and wait for my glue to dry or anything. I can just stick a glue dot on there and move on. Okay, now I have these cute little envelopes. I'm not going to fold the top down because I'm basically going to put these onto my card, this general pattern. I also have a stitch circle die cut. Unfortunately, that we don't carry the stitch circles anymore. They are sold out, but I did put the "You Are Loved" on here. I will link that below, and that is just stamped in archival black. And I'm just going to kind of nestle those around there like that. And I'll fuss with placement, but now I want to make it so that the hearts are kind of cascading out. All right, and there is our Slimline card. Got all those hearts stuck down, got lots of texture in the background from that overlay, and then all the glitter and shimmer on those hearts and the shine of the foil. I love how this one turned out, and I hope you did too. All right, so I didn't want to just show you kind of girly options for handmade cards for Valentine's. I also want to show you a masculine version. So I'm using that same heart die, except this time I cut it out of silver foil cardstock. I took the same silver foil cardstock and cut out this little label, and that's from this set here, the So Happy Together. I'm also going to be using a sentiment from this set. And then I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 piece of scarlet red cardstock. And this is kind of like it's a deep red, kind of more like a brownish red. And then a 1/2 inch by probably like 7 or 8 inches long. I'm not gonna need the whole thing, but I just cut myself a little extra so I have left over in case I want it. And this is toffee cardstock. And then of course, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. So first off, we are going to do some distressing. So I'm going to take these 2 pieces and I'm going to liberally spray them with water. This is just plain water. Okay, and then I'm just going to crumple them. Now you do want to uncrumple this completely while it's wet. And I'm just going to actually try and push it quite flat. And you want to do this while it's wet because if you wait for it to dry, it's going to rip on you. Now you could just leave these to air dry, but I'm actually going to hit it with my heat tool and then I'll be right back. All right, now that these pieces are dry, and they're like pretty much completely dry, I'm going to take Scarlet ink, which is the same color as the paper, and I'm just going to take it direct to paper, and it's going to pick up some of those lovely wrinkles. The harder you push, the more it will go down into the paper. So start off light and just kind of see if you're getting the coverage you want, or if you want some of those little finer wrinkles to be picked up with the ink. All right, I think that's pretty good. I'm happy with the ink coverage on that. And then same thing, I have the toffee ink pad for the toffee paper. So now we're going to work on our little heart overlay. This looks pretty brand new and shiny next to this wrinkly bit. So what we're gonna do is I got some black paint here and like makeup wedge. This is pretty much like black craft paint. So this would definitely be a cheaper paint. This is an artist fluid acrylic. And the reason why I want to show you this is that there is a difference. So the craft one, you can get a good coverage and everything, but once it dries, you can just flake the paint off with a fingernail. Like if you scratch it, it will remove the paint. Whereas this one, it actually bonds to the surface. Also, if you have distress paint, it will bond to the surface as well. So you can definitely get away using the craft paint, but just keep that in mind. If it's being handled a lot, it will kind of scratch off. With what we're going to do, probably won't matter a whole lot. So I just happen to have this artist grade one from like all the mixed media and stuff that I used to do a lot. So I'm just going to use that one because I like that it'll stay put. So I just hit this with my heat tool and it dried it right up. And now I'm gonna grab my Versamat. I don't wanna do this on top of my all-purpose mat because it will ruin the finish on it. So I have a sanding block here. You could also use just a piece of sandpaper. And I'm just going to very lightly start going over this. You can go in one direction if you want. You can kind of swirl it around. And basically just keep going until you're happy with the finish that you have. I'm just going to wipe all that kind of paint dust off of here. So you can see how it looks kind of like all battered and beaten up now. And then we have this little piece, which is where our sentiment is going to go. I have the "You Are My Favorite Part of Me" stamp, and that's from this set that I showed you, the So Happy Together. And then I'm going to use black archival ink. You could also use Stays-On if you have it. It dries really fast on slick surfaces like this. The archival, I'm going to hit it with a heat tool to make sure that it's dry before I move on. So the trick is to stamp straight up and down without like minimal sliding, if at all possible. There we go. That's as good as I could ask for. So I'm going to hit that with the heat tool and get that dry. I'm going to grab my little sanding block again, and I am going to scuff this up. I'm going to kind of avoid the center part where my sentiment is. And I'm just going to add a little bit of that scratchy texture all the way around. Okay, I'm just going to grab my glue here. I'm going to add glue to the back of this and then put my crumpled paper face down on the back here. Now you can see I did get a little bit of paper shrinkage, but it will be fine because we do have a border around the edge to work with. All right, so there's our background panel. And then I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this. So I'm just going to, I guess I'm just going to rip this because I didn't bring my scissors. I'm going to roll one edge under to create like a kind of flat edge. And then I'm going to put this on here and I'm gonna go over to my stapler and just put a staple in that right there. All right, so I did the same thing on the other side. You can see a staple in each end there. If you have a mini stapler, you could probably use that instead. I just used a regular stapler. And then I want some foam tape on this, and this is gonna go over top. It almost looks like a belt buckle. I'm just gonna put this foam tape under here to add a little bit of dimension. That's why I like these ends being long, because then you can decide exactly, do you want it in the middle? Do you want it off center? Do you want up, down, wherever you want it? And I think I'm gonna put it right about there. Okay, and then I'll just flip that over to the back and add a little bit of glue. So there's your little panel that is ready to go onto a card base now. Could either pop it up or put it on flat. I would say, because of the texture, either use really sticky double-sided tape, or I would be tempted to use liquid glue just to make sure it goes on there. I'm actually going to use some foam tape. All right, there we go. And our finished masculine card using that same heart background. I think it definitely does not look very girly anymore. I hope you enjoyed this little bit different version. And here are our finished cards. I hope you guys found some inspiration from these ideas and that it helped you to see the possibilities that you can get from even just one background die. You could definitely replicate this idea with other dies as well. I'll have everything linked below, as well as links to the other creative design team members' videos. I'm the last one on the list, so all the other videos have been posted, so I will put those links down there for you. And I hope you enjoy all the DIY Valentine inspiration. See you next time. Bye.